What is the creepiest thing you've seen in the woods? I was on a camping trip with some friends of mine, and we found like 7 or 8 chipmunks and squirrels all in a pile, but they were all dead without arms or legs. I was a cook on board several NOAA research ships. Up in the Bering Sea, I saw what appeared to be a massive, black, triangular-shaped craft dive under the water. I viewed it from a distance of maybe 2 nautical miles. I was walking with family when I was little, and we came across a sheep's head. No body or blood, just a severed sheep's head on the path. It was the first time I noticed sheep's eyes have slit pupils, and I think my first contact with something so gruesome. I've walked by a picked clean spinal column before in the woods. It wasn't far from a little girl's shoe upon closer inspection. And moving debris with a stick, it was definitely a quadruped spine like a deer, and the shoe probably carried by a flood, cause that creek overflowed and carried weird shit downstream frequently. Definitely ominous at first, thinking I'd stumbled upon evidence that something terrible had happened. I was driving home after an extremely late night at work. I lived in the middle of nowhere, about a mile. Before I got there, a woman covered in blood jumped out of the woods into the middle of the road screaming. I panicked and went around her, then slammed on the brakes to help. Her boyfriend had beaten her and was currently chasing after her in the woods. I got her in my car and called the police. They met us at the hospital because I told them there was no way I was waiting on the side of the road when he was coming. I was driving through rural parts of Missouri with a buddy. We drove down a single lane road that had no exit. At the end of the road, there was a group of deer corpses laid in a perfect circle. I'd say there was at least 10 deer. I'd been at football training with a few of my cousins when I was about 10 years old. We decided to take a walk before our parents picked us up, so we went along the canal towpath. My cousin looked down in the canal and saw a really nice jacket floating along, and being a weird scavenger person, decided to reach in to fish it out. Well, the jacket turned over, and so did the man wearing it. He also had no face left. Not gonna lie, that was rough. Found a deer with its hind end ate up. Few feet away was a coyote with the hind end ate up. Then another few feet away a fox with its hind end ate up. Nothing else was there. No bullet holes or signs of a arrow or anything else. Couldn't find any tracks from other people or animal. It was pretty creepy. Found in the hills of WV. This is probably less scary than a lot of the other posts, but I was pretty sure I was going to be the nameless victim at the start of a horror movie to show how dangerous the monster is. Basically, my dad and I were walking through the woods when we came across a young moose leg lying on the ground. It looked like it had been violently torn off with no sign of the rest of the moose anywhere. It was fresh with blood still on the wound, probably no more than a couple hours old. My dad is a pretty skilled hunter, so he handed me his axe that he was carrying and told me to watch for wolves while he started looking for tracks. After a little bit he came back saying, "That's weird. Normally if it was wolves you'd be able to find paw prints, but I can't see any. Also no bear prints, so I have no idea what killed this." And so I'm like, "You didn't find any tracks at all?" And his very reassuring response was, "Well, I did find what appears to be the mama moose tracks headed this way," showing me the tracks. "You can see how her stride is a lot longer here. Whatever killed her baby, she didn't want to fight it. She just took off running." He then pulls out his bear spray and holds it at the ready as we kept walking deeper into the woods with the unnamed non-track leaving predator armed with bear spray and an axe. When I was about 7 or 8, my parents sent me to a local summer camp that they would pick me up from in the afternoons. I never really liked it because the kids were mean. Everything was either broken or not clean, and the counselors obviously didn't care. I remember the girls' changing room had a door that lead out to the woods, but the door knob was gone, so it was unlocked all the time and you could see into it. This was primarily where the girls changed into their bathing suits, and there was usually someone blocking the view while we changed, so the boys couldn't look in. Well, one day I'm changing alone and someone wasn't blocking the door. I look over and see an eye peeping in through the hole watching me change. I pull the rest of my clothes back on quickly and run out to tell my twin brother. I tell my dad that I don't want to go back to that camp anymore, and he begrudgingly takes us out of the camp pretty soon after because he knew how much we hated it. Years later, the camp has been closed down for many years, and I'm asking my dad about it. He gets really grim and tells me it shut down because a 13-year-old boy had a 7-year-old girl in the woods right behind the girl's bathroom a few weeks after I had told him about someone watching me change. Cowlitz River, Washington State. Camping with my dad and sister me buddies, early 90s. Something was throwing rocks and sticks into our camp. We shined a flashlight out and caught a reflection of eyes and a silhouette. Very tall. Kept throwing stuff in our camp randomly for about 15 minutes. We just stoked the fire really high. In the morning I woke up to heavy footsteps in our camp and something reeked. Woke up my dad. He shook the tent and yelled. Whatever it was ran off. My girlfriend and I were hiking along some abandoned railroad tracks and we get to a small bridge going over a little creek. I'm about to go explore under the bridge when she points something out. I look over and in the woods across from us, I see a guy. Him like whatever and keep headed down to the creek area and then the guy stands up and he's naked. We immediately backtrack pretty quickly to get away from there and once we're like 1 minute down the trail I look back and this naked dude is just standing in the middle of the trail watching us walk away. In a patch of trees off of a field near where I keep my horse there's one of those big oil drums sealed up with a very heavy boulder on top. The only way it could have got there is being placed by a tractor or some sort of heavy lifting equipment. My partner and I tried to push it off but no luck. I don't know why, but it creeps me out every time I see it. I regularly walk my dogs past it to see if they show any interest, but honestly after watching them look for a toy that was clearly in my lap I'm not sure I have much faith in them anymore. Walking on the beach with my boyfriend, and we had walked to a giant rocky cliff to Makiat. Somebody was just gazing at the ocean, crying and shaking. Mind you, this is late at night, like around 9:30 p.m. We asked him if he was okay. He apologized and practically ran back down the cliff, away from the dangerous areas. My boyfriend and I watched him until he reached the public area and decided to call it a night. I'm pretty sure he was going to jump. My friend and I were chilling in the woods one day back in high school and see a dog walking by, later followed by this kid. He looked troubled, so we asked if he needed help. He obliged, telling us he was dog sitting for his friend and the dog got loose. So we spent a good hour following this dog and kid around, going deeper and deeper into the woods. Eventually I finally got the dog to come to me, but it wasn't wearing a collar, so I wasn't able to get a hold. My friend and I look away for just few seconds to discuss strategy, and when we turn back around the boy and the dog are both gone. It was like they completely vanished. Keep in mind it was autumn so any footsteps could be heard from quite afar. But it was just silent, not a single trace of them anywhere. Still don't really know what happened. Maybe they ran away real quick. Who knows? Was definitely enough to creep us out though. This took place in the Australian bush around 10:11 at night. I was 17, leading a staggered column of about 60 cadets to our detachment campsite. Due to light discipline rules, only myself at the very front of the group and the other flight commander at the rear had torches on. This was so that any vehicles coming along the trail could see us, and so that most of the cadets could maintain their night vision. We were camouflaged up, and thus difficult to see at night. As we walked along I periodically looked to my sides, and kept seeing what looked like dewdrops on the ground. Almost like tiny blue gems glinting in my torchlight either side of the road point. I had to maintain my position in the formation, so I couldn't get a good look at what they were. However, after a while we stopped for a very brief break, and I took the opportunity to have a closer look. Walking over to the side of the trail I spotted a small cluster of the diamonds, and focused my head torch on them. Rather than seeing diamonds or dewdrops or anything remotely pleasant, I instead saw a group of about 5 large spiders just crouching in the leaf litter and staring at me. They looked like huntsmen, which are about the size of an adult's hand. Sweeping my head around, I realized there were thousands of the things, all over the ground, some on the trunks of trees, and everywhere around me, glaring at the light affixed to my head. I had a very brisk walk back to the formation, and attempted to play it cool, while screaming in my head. Being a massive arachnophobe, I have no freaking clue how I managed to set up a tent, and spend the next week in that cursed forest. Thank you so much for watching, and soobscrooble if you want.